Rain showers. The Riot Act. Our streets became congested with a disturbing cadence unfamiliar to a fairly quiet working-class neighborhood. We were a neighborhood under siege amidst gunshots, police and fire sirens, screeching car tires, overlapping, low-flying helicopter whirs, and excited chatter which bounced off the house from every direction. Like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz swept up in a tornado, the events extended beyond the comprehension of a 10-year-old girl in the Motor City on a hot day in July. Interrupted by the sound of popping noises outside like fireworks, mysterious and unrecognizable at first, the rhythmic gunfire forced my family and neighbors towards the sanctuary of our homes. Afraid, people walking through the neighborhood ran to the alcoves and doorways of nearby buildings. Although my parents and maternal grandparents ushered us away from the windows, we, my little sister, cousin, who had come to spend the weekend, and I couldn't imagine what was happening. The phone rang repeatedly in the background, but grandmother whispered to each caller, "We're okay." At that moment, the feared unknown was a random shooting in the streets and from rooftops. When their backs were turned, we peeked out between the living room curtains. Women and men ran back and forth between our home and the neighbors. The people's arms overflowed with ladies', infant, and women's clothing, shoe boxes, fresh vegetables, and cases of canned goods. People carried bakery boxes piled high from across the street. Men and women partnered to balance sofas and mattresses on their shoulders and backs. They used the property of others as an escape route for their bounty. Our house is on Lothrop Street, between Dexter and Grand River Avenues, near West Grand Boulevard on the west side of Detroit. It is a bustling business artery set between three different streets with a mix of businesses and homes. Standing on my front porch facing Lothrop, to my left is Dexter, that connects to West Grand Boulevard, and to my right, Grand River, which runs from downtown to the suburbs. Across the street from my home is a building that holds the Charles Furniture Warehouse on the bottom and offices above. Facing the front of my house is State Representative John Conyers' office. Often, looking out of my upstairs bedroom window, I see him on the phone or talking with Rosa Parks while she takes notes or uses a typewriter. The phone rang again. Dad listened with a frown on his face, hung up, and told us that men using soda pop bottles filled with gasoline and stuffed with pieces of rags were lighting and throwing them to start fires. Suddenly, I heard grandfather outside yell to a man across the street with a soda pop bottle in his hand. He ran across the street to speak with him. I went upstairs to my bedroom window to get a better look. Grandfather, hands gesturing seriously, explained something to the man with the bottle. Standing at the top of the stairway landing, I heard him describe to the family how he pleaded with the man not to set the building on fire with a Molotov cocktail. The explosion shook the house. Grandfather rushed to the front porch, stuck his head back in the house, and called for Dad to help him pull the water hose to the front and fill up pails of water. In a calm voice, Dad escorted me, my sister, and cousin to the basement. Mom and grandmother refused to leave them. Great-grandmother was already in the basement, praying aloud. Dad ran up the basement steps and outside to join grandfather to check on us. The phone rang. After a few minutes, we heard her scream, "Oh no!" Grandmother mumbled something about her mother. Not knowing what to do, I called to Mom upstairs, who came down hurriedly. Grandmother couldn't compose herself and fell into my mom's arms while saying her sister called, and their mother was all right, but something terrible happened. Someone set the gas station afire next to her mother's home. The powerful explosion skipped over her house but burned down all the other houses on her side of the street. Leaving great-grandmother, grandmother, and mom in the basement, I ran upstairs to get dad or grandfather to help calm them all. My sister and cousin followed me up the stairs to the living room, but it was empty. We kneeled on the sofa, pulled the curtains back, and were surprised to see an orange glow directly across the street. I heard grandfather say angrily, "Damn, I asked that punk not to throw that thing. Told him we had kids on this block." Everything was on fire. The office, warehouse, and all the stores were swallowed up in flames. Slowly, whitish gray smoke billowed from the sides of windows in Representative John Conyers' office and sneaked through the cracks of the furniture warehouse door. Then, the building's windows began to burst, and pieces of glass sprayed the area like a hail shower. Every man on the block was in front of a water hose, hosing down their homes to keep them cool from the fire's intensity. Neighbors band together to help each other. It seemed like forever before fire trucks finally arrived, but by now it was too late. My whole world was ablaze. The firemen fought the orange monster. The burning smell smothered those outside and began to penetrate indoors. For the remainder of the day, the battery of firemen wrestled with recurring fires across the street, made difficult by furniture and mattresses stored in the warehouse. By the time daylight slipped away, the flames were almost extinguished. Gray and white smoldering smoke replaced the bright orange and black burn palette. I stepped out onto the front porch, against my mother's wishes, to see the aftermath of the day. A loud rumbling vibrated the porch, making me think of an earthquake was happening, but instead I looked up to see 2 army tanks rolling down the block. A few soldiers walked alongside, just like in a movie or on the TV news of Vietnam. One tank rolled to a stop right in front of my house. Soldiers climbed out and then positioned themselves up and down the street. A few even sat on our front lawn. Things were strangely quiet. Mom said that the TV newsman announced a curfew was in place, so no one could be on the streets at dark. We all gathered on the porch, huddled together, and noticed our neighbors doing the same. The presence of soldiers gave us a strange feeling of safety. Their stern faces stared at us, as though we were the enemy, and we stared back at them. Grandmother went into the kitchen and soon called my name. I found her in the kitchen making bologna and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and stirring an ice-filled pitcher of her much-loved lemonade. I asked why she was making so many sandwiches, and she said, "To feed the soldiers." After washing our hands, cousin and I helped her stack the sandwiches on one of her favorite entertaining platters and placed the drinks on a colorful tray. She called to Dad and Grandfather to help carry things outside. After passing out sandwiches and lemonade to Mom, great-grandmother, my sister, and cousins sitting on the porch, Grandmother, Dad, and Grandfather went down the front walkway with me tagging along. Grandmother asked the soldier who looked like he was in charge if they were hungry, and he said yes. We began to pass out sandwiches and glasses. The stern faces broke into small smiles. I heard a few of them say, "Thank you, ma'am, and this lemonade sure is good." While the soldiers took their positions for the night, one of the neighbors who owned a security guard company did the same. Armed with his rifle, he patrolled the alleyway most of the night in the corner store where his company provided security. I tried to make sense of what happened that day. At 10 years old, nothing had prepared me for the moments that led to the destruction of my neighborhood. Nothing prepared me for hiding from sniper bullets. Ultimately, I tried to be brave in spite of the panic-stricken look in the eyes of the adults around me. There was no way to know how much the world as I knew it had changed by the actions of others on that day. But deep inside, I felt that my innocence, my life between the boulevard and the avenues, would no longer be enough for whatever tomorrow would bring.